sweet like a buttercup. You're a Barbie doll. Show them all what I'm made of. Strut down the hall. Won't stop till I get enough.
All right, so you guys wanted to know more about this whole legal thing going on with Sean Diddy Combs.
Yeah.
It's pretty wild, and we're going to try to break it all down for you.
Yeah, for sure.
We're going to deep dive on this Newsweek article that came out just a few days ago.
Mm-hmm.
It really lays it all out there.
Yeah.
And one thing that's really interesting is this twist
Okay.
that one of Trump's old lawyers is now involved.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Marc Kasowitz.
That's right. Marc Kasowitz is now in the mix.
Cool.
It's interesting how this case with Combs kind of touches on all these bigger trends.
Yeah.
Like how celebrities deal with legal stuff and the whole impact of the Me Too movement and what role these big-time lawyers play.
Yeah, so for anyone who hasn't been following every little thing that's been happening,
Right.
Combs is facing a bunch of lawsuits right now.
A lot.
Over 30, according to this article.
Wow.
And he's also in jail at the moment. But
Yeah.
this new thing is that Kasowitz has joined this one particular case brought by this Jane Doe, who is claiming that she was raped by Combs and Jay-Z at a VMA's after party back in 2000.
Oh, wow.
2000.
Yeah, that's a long time ago.
I know.
Yeah, and that many lawsuits.
I know, it's crazy.
Over 30. Even for somebody who's in the public eye all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Is that normal?
That seems like a ton. I mean, are lawsuits just something that comes with the territory when you're famous?
Well, I mean, it is true that people in the spotlight, especially in entertainment,
Right.
but they're more likely to get sued and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But 30 is a lot, even for them.
Yeah.
The important thing to remember, though, is that just because someone gets sued doesn't mean they're actually guilty.
Right.
Just an accusation, and they have to investigate it and prove it in court.
Right.
The whole point of the legal system is to figure out what's true, look at all the evidence,
Yeah.
and decide if there's enough to go to trial.
Okay, so let's zoom in on this specific case that Kasowitz is now a part of. The article says that this Jane Doe was only 13 years old when this alleged incident happened back in 2000.
Oh, wow.
That's really heavy.
Yeah, that's incredibly serious.
And you can kind of see that in the way Kasowitz is approaching it.
Right.
Their article says that he's really emphasizing how these accusations are well-grounded and based on a thorough investigation.
Yeah, it seems like he's already trying to shut down any attempts to just dismiss the case,
Yeah.
especially since Jay-Z's lawyers are pushing for that.
Right. The article mentioned that Jay-Z's lawyer, Alex Spiro, he pointed out some things that don't quite add up.
Oh, really? Like what?
The Jane Doe said she was watching the VMAs on a Jumbotron at the party,
Okay.
but apparently there wasn't one.
Oh, interesting.
And then she said that she talked to Benji Madden that night.
Okay.
But he supposedly had an alibi. He was in Chicago. I mean, a Jumbotron in 2000, that does sound a little off.
Yeah.
It does.
That's weird.
Yeah.
Those inconsistencies are interesting. I mean, in these kinds of situations, lawyers on both sides, they have to look at every little detail.
Right.
Do these things actually hurt Jane Doe's case? Or will Kasowitz try to say they're no big deal?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe she just misremembered some stuff after all these years.
Right, because it was so long ago.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how it all plays out.
Let's switch gears a little bit and talk about Marc Kasowitz.
Okay.
He represented Trump during that whole Russia investigation, remember?
I do, yeah.
So he's definitely not new to these huge legal battles.
No, not at all.
So what kind of lawyer is he? What does this mean for the case now that he's involved?
Well, Kasowitz is known for being really aggressive.
Okay.
Some might even say combative in how he handles these cases.
Right.
He's not afraid to go after his opponents.
Mm-hmm.
Now, whether that same style will work in this case, who knows?
Right.
But bringing him on definitely shows that Combs is taking this seriously.
Yeah.
And he's ready to fight back.
It's like calling in the big guns.
Exactly. It's a statement.
It really is.
So we got Kasowitz on one side, and then on the other side, representing these 120 alleged victims, is Tony Busby.
Oh, yeah. Him.
Who the article describes as this fire-breathing Texas trial lawyer.
Wow. So what do we know about him?
Well, from what we've heard, Busby is just as tenacious and aggressive as Kasowitz, maybe even more so.
Oh, wow.
He's known for taking on powerful people,
Yeah.
big institutions,
Mm-hmm.
Having someone like him representing the alleged victims means this is going to be a really intense and public legal battle.
Yeah, it sounds like it's going to be a huge clash of the titans.
Oh, yeah, a total showdown. It's going to be interesting to watch how their styles clash, especially with all the media attention this case is getting.
Oh, yeah, for sure. The article even mentioned that Combs' legal team is already calling out that docuseries about his legal problems. They're saying it's just cashing in on the media circus. I mean, is that like a standard defense tactic? Or do they have a point?
I mean, it's definitely something we see a lot in cases like this.
Right.
Trying to discredit anyone who's speaking out or making accusations.
Mm-hmm.
But it also brings up this question about how much public opinion actually matters.
Yeah.
Like, can all this media attention, these documentaries, can they actually affect what happens in court?
That's what I was thinking. It's like with social media now, everyone's got an opinion and everyone wants to share it.
Right.
But does any of that actually matter in a court of law?
Well, in theory, it shouldn't.
Right.
The legal system's supposed to be separate from all that.
Mm-hmm.
The judge and jury are only supposed to care about the evidence they hear in court.
Yeah.
But they're human. Right.
True.
It's hard to say how much public opinion gets in there, even if they don't realize it.
So it's like you have the right to a fair trial.
Right.
But then you've got this whole other trial happening in the public eye.
Exactly. It's like two trials at the same time.
It really is.
That's what makes these cases so complicated and so interesting, you know?
Yeah.
You've got the legal arguments and strategies going on in the courtroom.
Yeah.
But then there's this whole other layer of public perception and how the media portrays it.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, hard to navigate for sure.
And then there's that quote from Combs that the article mentions.
Oh, yeah. What was
He
it?
kind of compared himself to R. Kelly.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, he said something like, there's a little bit of R. Kelly in all of us.
Yikes.
Yeah, not a good look at all.
No, not at all.
It just shows how even things you say off the cuff can come back to bite you in these situations.
That's true. They might not matter legally,
Right.
but they can definitely affect how people see you.
Yeah.
And that can influence public opinion and maybe even sway the jury.
Wow. Yeah.
It's all connected.
It's like every word, every action you take,
Mhm.
every tweet, it's all under a microscope when you're in the middle of something like this.
That's true.
Oh, and speaking of, the article mentioned that docuseries, The Fall of Diddy.
Mhm.
It's airing its last episode soon.
Oh, wow.
And Combs' trial is set for May 5th, so things are really about to heat up.
Yeah, it seems like the next few months are going to be really important in this whole thing.
Yeah.
With the trial coming up and more info coming out, who knows how the story will change
Right.
and what new legal stuff they'll try.
Okay, so just to recap for everyone listening,
Mhm.
we've got Combs facing all these lawsuits,
A ton of them.
including this one from Jane Doe, who's now being represented by Trump's former lawyer, Marc Kasowitz.
Wow.
And then Jay-Z's caught up in it too, but his lawyer's trying to get him out of it.
Right.
Then there's Tony Busby representing over 100 other alleged victims,
Wow.
and he's ready to go head-to-head with Kasowitz.
It's a lot.
And all this is happening with the media all over it, documentaries, public opinion, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, you pretty much covered it.
Did I miss anything?
I think you got it all. It's a mess of accusations and legal stuff and media attention.
Mm-hmm.
And it really shows how these big cases are about way more than just the people involved.
Yeah.
They touch on bigger issues of power and who's responsible and how we try to get justice.
It's true. You can't help but think about all that.
Yeah.
But for a listener who's just trying to understand what's going on,
Right.
what should they be focusing on? What are the key things to watch as this all plays out?
Well, I think the most important thing is what happens in court.
Okay.
It's easy to get lost in the media frenzy.
Right.
But at the end of the day, it's the evidence and the legal arguments that matter.
Yeah.
Pay attention to what legal strategies they're using, who they call as witnesses, what evidence they show.
Okay.
That's the stuff that builds the case.
So focus on the facts, not the hype.
Exactly.
Got it. What else?
Yeah, and it's also really important to think about all the different sides of this story.
Right.
You know, you've got Combs' team, and they're saying these accusations are totally made up, like pure fiction.
Right.
Then you've got the alleged victims and their lawyer, Busby, and they're pushing for Combs to be held accountable.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the middle of it all, you've got Jay-Z, who's kind of caught in the crossfire,
Yeah.
trying to understand everyone's perspective, why they're doing what they're doing, and the evidence they bring. That's key.
It's like putting together a puzzle, right?
Exactly.
You've got all these pieces of info, different stories, and you're trying to figure out how they all fit together.
Yeah. And just like with a puzzle, sometimes pieces might be missing or they don't fit quite right.
Right.
That's where you have to really think critically.
Okay.
You got to look at the info, question what you think you know, and think about if the sources are reliable.
So it's not just about believing everything you hear.
No.
It's about really looking at the information, asking questions, and coming to your own conclusions.
Exactly. And that's super important in these big cases where there's so much media attention and people trying to spin things their way.
Mm.
Don't just take things at face value. Dig deeper, look for the details, and consider different points of view.
That's good advice for anything, really.
It is.
Not just legal stuff.
Yeah, it's about being informed and engaged,
Cool.
And in this case, it also means remembering that everyone involved deserves a fair process.
Right.
Combs is innocent until proven guilty, and it's up to the courts to figure out the truth based on what's presented.
And that's where all this talk about Kasowitz being Trump's lawyer gets tricky.
Yeah.
Because it's hard not to think about that, even if we try not to.
It definitely makes things more complicated.
Yeah.
And it shows how these big cases often get mixed up with all these other social and political things happening in the world.
Right.
But at the end of the day, the focus should be on what actually happened, the evidence, and the legal arguments.
So for our listeners who might be feeling a little overwhelmed with all this information,
Yeah.
how can they really focus on those key things you mentioned?
I'd say try to imagine you're on the jury.
Okay.
What evidence would be most convincing to you?
Mm-hmm.
What questions would you want answered?
Right.
What would be most important to you in deciding the verdict?
Wow, that's a really good way to think about it.
Yeah, it makes you really think about everything we've talked about.
It really does.
It helps you cut through all the noise and focus on what matters in a legal case.
Yeah.
The evidence, the arguments, and whether they can prove their case.
Well, I think we've given everyone a pretty in-depth look at this whole situation with Sean Diddy Combs.
I think so.
It's a case with so many layers, serious accusations, and a lot on the line.
Absolutely.
As this story continues to unfold, remember to stay informed, stay engaged, and most importantly, stay critical.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
Don't just believe everything you hear, question things, analyze, and come to your own conclusions.
That's right.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll keep following this story as it develops.
I'm sure we will.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep the conversation going.
Sound the alarm. I'm coming up. We'll have a ball. I'm sweet like a buttercup. You're a Barbie doll. Show them all what